Well, hello, Tamalyn.
Hello.
So,
Nice to be here again.
it is. And I mean, I've been just loving these conversations with you. And we've been celebrating your 50 years in belly dance through these interviews, and your stories are just absolutely incredible. They're just amazing. And we have one more interview after this, and then we're going to have a nice celebration, a hafla to honor you and to dance and just celebrate. So,
Right. And the Hafla is going to be in Biloxi. Thank
yeah,
you for organizing in Biloxi, Mississippi. But everybody's welcome to come.
yes, it's open for to the public. It's free, and it's just to celebrate this beautiful soul right in front here to the dance that you've done for the last 50 years and shared your beauty, your soul through the dance. And it's going to be May 16 and a Saturday at the French Club. I'll have more information, but it is on my it's on my Facebook, and it's on my website, feministy.net. And Tamina, you've been sharing it on your Facebook
Yes.
too, so that's perfect. So if you're around anybody, you're more than welcome to come and celebrate with us on May 16 at 4 o'clock. So today's interview and our conversation will be about your dream of teaching in China. And how did that unfold? And can you share that wonderful journey of yours?
Yes. Actually, okay. The way it started, like I never really had much interest in going to Asia. And then I don't know why it just didn't really occur to me. I spent a lot of time in South America. I spent a lot of time, you know, or at least not a lot of time, but I was very interested in the Middle East. Um, so I decided I wanted to go to India. And my friend's husband was a senior pilot with United Airlines. This goes back to 2001. So he said, I could get a buddy pass. He gave me buddy passes, but to go to India, you had to go through a few continents. So I went to visit my parents in Seattle. I was living in Miami. Went to Seattle. Then then the next flight was to Tokyo, and then from Tokyo to Hong Kong, and then Hong Kong to Delhi. And actually, I got to Tokyo and I loved it. I got to Hong Kong, I loved it even more. And I was like, wow, I want to spend time in these places too. And I did go to India, and that was also amazing. And then I went to England on my way back. That it was incredible. And also when you have a buddy pass, well, back in those days, the flights weren't that full. And if there's seats available in business class, you can get a business class seat. So imagine most of my flights around the world in that trip were business class. And I had taken care of their stepson while they went on vacation. So he gifted me these buddy passes. I didn't even have to pay that little percentage. It was really amazing. That's what started it all. And then a couple of years later, this restaurant in Hong Kong that I had danced at once while I passed through Hong Kong, they hired me for 3 weeks. They brought me back to Hong Kong, and it was right after the bird flu, and it was this Egyptian restaurant called Habibi, and they hired me to dance there for 3 weeks every night. And then I enjoyed it so much. And then I had become friends with Mei Jen, who is the belly dance pioneer in Hong Kong. She like started the whole thing. And she would organize my workshops for years and years. From then on, she would organize my workshops. Well, in 2003, when I was in Hong Kong, which is a different atmosphere from the rest of China, even though now there was the handover from Britain to China. But um, you need a visa to get across the border into mainland China. So I went, there's this town, and at that time it was really little, and it was called Shenzhen. And you could go to this little shopping mall, and they, it was everybody from Hong Kong would go there and get manicures and get massages and buy cheap stuff and knock off designer stuff and eat good food. And it was so much fun. And I was like, but with my little 3-day visa, I can only go as far as Shenzhen. So I thought, there's that whole huge country of China. And how can I get to teach belly dance in China? Think of all the people. And I didn't know a lot about it. You know, we were closed off from China all when I was growing up. I didn't know. We had not too much information, but I thought that would be a dream. But I never really found a way to make it happen. So one day in 2006, this is a fast forward, I was at the Ahlan wa Sahlan festival in Egypt, and it was a crazy night. The opening night, there were two groups of dancers from two schools in Beijing. They were there at Ahlan wa Sahlan in Cairo, and they got in a big fight. It was literally a brawl, and it was a scandal. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I didn't even know anybody had started belly dancing in China. And then I'm backstage, I'm about to dance, and I meet this Chinese woman, this tall, beautiful, and she's like, I really like your costume. It was a really unusual costume that I made out of Zanzibari fabrics, and then my music that I recorded in Zanzibar. And she was like, what you do is so different. And then I explained to her about 40 Days and 1,001 Nights and how I was in Zanzibar for that project, and it influenced what the show that I was doing that night. And she said, "Oh, I'd like to bring you to China." And then I'm like, "Wait a minute, which side of the brawl was she on?" And she's like, "No, I'm from Shanghai. I have nothing to do with any of that." And I was like, oh, good. So she brought me to China, to Shanghai for a weekend on part of my. By then, I was touring Asia every fall. I would go to Hong Kong, Japan, different parts of Asia. I would set up a tour. And so this trip to Shanghai was part of the tour. And it was mind blowing because she had the show in a disco or nightclub, very trendy young people. And here I am, 48 years old, dancing, belly dancing in China when oh, I remember growing up, it was completely off limits, like until sometime in the 70s when Nixon went there. And then we got footage of on TV of people in dark suits riding bicycles and everybody the same. And I'm like, here I am, and everybody's all sparkly and wanting to belly dance and screaming while I dance at this disco. And I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm a middle-aged woman, and this is who knew that my life would take me there. And then I taught a workshop for the weekend, and it was just wonderful. So then she would bring me back every year. And my friend Keishi Chai, she also had the dream of China, and she speaks Chinese because she's Chinese Australian. And she had for 2008, she had managed to organize a 4-city tour for her and for her to bring another dancer. I was already doing, I was, by then I was going to be in Shanghai every year. So I was teaching with Estelle as the organizer in Shanghai. I was teaching with her, and in case she became part of that, and in case she brought me to different cities in kind of in the hinterlands of China that were just starting to see belly dance. And it was like opening a door, like people didn't even see foreigners hardly at all in those cities back then. Nobody spoke English. It was just a completely different world, and it was amazing. So after that, 2009, for the next 10 years from 2009 on, Estelle hosted me to teach month-long workshops in Shanghai, 1 month. And it was 6 hours a day of teaching, culminating in a theater show hosted in government theaters with government officials in attendance. And those shows, I would create those shows from the students in the workshops, but the workshops, you never know who is going to come. Like they had to sign up for the whole month, but they could, they were from all different towns all over China. Some were total beginners, some were already dancing. And it was intensive, and they were going to have to be on that stage at the end of it all. There were a few that were not ready and they were like, no, I just want to take the workshop. That's okay. But I had to create the whole show. So in the morning, we'd do technique for 3 hours. Then we'd have lunch for an hour. And then I keep doing this at my workshops around the world. Actually, I do 3 hours technique, lunch, an hour of lecture, and videos because they couldn't get the videos that we would get. They don't have YouTube. They have all the Chinese equivalents of all of our social media, but they don't have any of our social media. So oftentimes they couldn't see what I had access to. So I would show videos and talk about different cultural dances, even other cultures as well, and how, they may be relating energetically or historically or something like that. And then 2 hours in the afternoon show preparation. And everybody who wanted to have a solo had a solo, but I would assign the music and I would give them an assignment of what to do with the music. If they were fairly new, I would assign them something that they could achieve. If they were pretty advanced, I would assign them something that was a big challenge that would make them uncomfortable. So they would have to overcome the discomfort, and that would help them grow. And it was all about, finding yourself because I would assign them music and and a concept, but they had to create their own dance. And it might not be choreography, it might be a structured improvisation or an improvisation, but they worked so hard. I've never seen anybody work so hard. Like our classes started at 10 in the morning. When I would come in, people had been in there practicing with their headphones on, everybody at the same time practicing since 8 in the morning. And I mean, sometimes also I had so much work to do to give feedback on what they were doing. Like I didn't just tell them do this and that's it. I'd have check-ins. And so I would watch what they were doing and they'd each have an appointment with me during lunch hour. So lunch hour, I'd be like with my noodles and my stuff, like watching and being like making corrections and giving feedback. It was really, really fascinating. And so this went on for 10 years and it was just really creative. I would choreograph about 5 group dances and then everything, and then I would perform as well. Estelle would perform, and then there would be the solos. Everything had a concept. For example, one year the concept was 7, and everything was in 7. I did 7 veils. Um, there was like a calligraphy dance. It was a structured improvisation where they danced, 7 people danced their names and in calligraphy, and there was a calligraphy and projected onto the back, and it was beautiful. It's actually on my website. There was one where it was the different cultural roots. So, you know, between from Baghdad to Andalusia was one. It's the spread of Islam, but only that direction, and how that affected music. And it wasn't so much how it affected dance, it was the music that was affected by that time, Arab Andalus music. It had that section, it had um, Ottoman Empire, golden age, of film. The Persian Empire and the Silk Road in one show. So it was like this journey. And in that one, like I would create these costumes that were could be used in different ways. So they would get each student would order a costume and from this tailor that we hired, and then the costume could be wrapped and done different things to look different. For example, for like this, let's say there's a top and it is covered, but the back is low, so you can turn it around and it goes under a bra. And in a skirt that can be wrapped different ways, sleeves that can be used different ways that have snap on and snap off sleeves hanging down. And it was a whole, it's hard to explain until you see it. It was several pieces that you put together in so many different ways, and then you trade with other people to have two or three different colored pieces for some of them. So, we had, and then there's one, they call it the Tamalyn dress that you could wrap different ways. It was a one-piece dress. There was everything was asymmetrical. You could wrap it down like a skirt. You could pull it up with long sleeves, have it a halter, have it again under the belly dance bra. So we would save money that way. Could have uniform costumes for a whole show with only one design, and they would only have to buy one. But what they would do, especially with the Tamerlan dress, this is a funny story because they were from all over China and they often had their schools or their classes. They would go back home with the dress that they had had made, and they would have tailors in their hometown make the dress for their students and they would sell them. And so pretty soon, I am serious, all over China, people were wearing these dresses. I would, in shows and classes, you name it. So for years, like I would show up at a workshop someplace, which I have to get to in a minute. I ended up Estelle started booking me in workshops all over China. I did my 1 month. Then she'd have me do a week in this city, a week in that city, a week in the other city. So, and we connected with like some of my main hosts were Wendy Wang, who now lives in New York. She's an amazing dancer, and she took 5 of my month-long workshops. And now she still comes to my online classes, even though she is like top-notch dancer, an original. She does so many creative and historical pieces. It's incredible. And Ryan Yangucho, he studied only a little bit with me, but we connected and he started hiring me to teach in his schools through Estelle for like week-long workshops. And so um, when I would go to these workshops, I would see all these people in the Tamerlan dress. I was like, wow. And they started selling them on, it was like wildfire. They started selling them on Taobao. Taobao is like Amazon here. And so but they changed the design a little. It wasn't quite as practical because they didn't quite get it by the time it got mass produced like that. And then I heard about those dresses that they were tailors in the Czech Republic of all places making those dresses. And then my friend Christine Yaven in Indonesia, she was a belly dance pioneer there. I met her during 40 Days and 1001 Nights, and I've worked with her a lot since. And she was making those dresses for quite a while or having them made because they're really practical. So for her dancers, and she would sell them as well. And so those dresses, they were like mushrooming, and it was there. All the stuff I would have made was like t-shirt material, jersey, and super practical. You could dress them up, dress them down, whatever, for stage, for class, you name it. So anyway, that was one aspect of a small aspect of my travels in China. But the month-long workshop was the really big deal. I mean, people, I still have contact with a lot of the people that studied with me at that time. When I go back to China now, I hadn't gone since the pandemic for 6 years until last year. Finally, I went to Shanghai and Fuzhou. Fuzhou is where Wendy Wang's studio is, even though she's in New York. Her students continue the studio. And so I went to both studios for weekend workshops, which I'm going to do again this year because they're both having their 20th anniversaries. I'm having my 50th anniversary. So, but last year it was so touching to go back to China after all those years. And, I have a very special relationship with my students. And when I actually go back to Shenzhen too, I used to teach in Shenzhen sometimes, but now I don't. But I go back on because um, I I always go back and visit Mei Jen in Hong Kong, and she's not hosting workshops anymore, but she recommended me to somebody, and I stay with her. And when I go to Hong Kong, Shenzhen is right across the border, and I love to shop for silks for the veils and just, enjoy going there. And I meet up with a lot of my old students, and we just go out. We actually just go out and party. I mean, we have so much fun. And so let's see, I'm going to look at my notes because I don't want to miss anything. Let's see. Yeah. And oh, one of the things that really influenced me in China, which Estelle helped me with, is to my concept of earth and sky in 6 points. That started with 40 Days and 1,001 Nights when I would go to different countries and I would feel the different energies, which I mentioned last week in my interview. Um, I would feel like the earth through my feet and through my body, and the sky through my arms and hands and eyes. And when I was in China, because in the beginning the dance was so new, people were always very skyward. They were very talented, but everything was hands and arms. And when it came to moving the hips, they weren't grounded. So I used those techniques of grounding that came naturally in through the feet that I felt in my body when I was in Africa, whether it was Egypt or Zanzibar or basically those two places. But I felt that pull of the earth. So I worked a lot with the feet. And now I notice, like, when I take workshops from source dancers, sometimes they talk about the same thing. At that time, I hadn't heard anybody talk about it. I had to figure it out myself. And then the magic muscle, like deep in, like the internalness. Also, they talk about these things. They do these things in, like in Egypt or a lot of the source dancers do these things. But like I didn't realize until I started doing them, and then I had to share it, and I had to come up with vocabulary to share it, vocabulary that could be translated into Chinese too. So, feet, magic muscle, long belly. It's also like grounding. And the dancers in China, their dances changed a lot with that technique. And then when we got to the heart, the open heart, that was natural for them. And the hands and arms, especially with wrists, that was natural, and the eyes. So you combine what comes naturally for them with these 3 points of grounding, and it's really spectacular. And another thing that was China became the biggest place for people to come and teach belly dance before the pandemic, especially Egyptians, Russians, and Ukrainians. It was like by the time the pandemic came around, there were so many workshops and festivals and huge events all over China, all over the place. I mean, and thinking back to, not too many years earlier, nothing was happening. And so it was a huge place for all these events. But sometimes there is this one thing that they can it can come very naturally to imitate. So there were at these events, there were, they learn very earnestly learn choreographies and imitate every little thing. And then the contests, like I was hired to judge competitions and stuff, and cookie cutter, cookie cutter. So I was like, okay, with my students, I need to break this because they have the talent, but they would come out and with the same expression, everything as whichever Egyptian dancer they were emulating or that they liked, like Dina's face or Samia Gamal's face or whatever. And I'm like, no, you have to find your face. Don't put on anybody else's face. You have to find your style and go inside yourself and find it yourself. And this is why I would give them all these challenges, and they had to find their own way. And I remember one girl, she said to me, but is this really what they do in the Middle East? And I said, no, I'm not. The music's from the Middle East, the concepts are Middle Eastern, but this is for us to find our way as individuals to express ourselves. And I can say I am so proud when I see, like on WeChat, which is like the Chinese Facebook, PayPal, everything else wound into one. It's called WeChat. They post sometimes their dances. It's mind blowing. These ladies are so talented, ladies and men, but men didn't come to my month-long workshop. I don't know why. They came to week-longs, but there's a lot of talented Chinese male dancers too. And but there's so much talent there. And that's something that the world doesn't realize. I don't know why. And there's basically a lot of talent in Asia in general. Like Christine in Indonesia is amazing. Um, there's, oh my gosh, there's a guy named Darren Ho in Singapore, amazing. RJ in the Philippines. There's like all over Asia. But in China, of course, that became like my second home for a while because I was there months every year. And it's just the talent and the hard working and the originality, the hardworking and originality. Yeah, I have to say things right, but anyway, the talent and the work and the originality of people is just it's astounding if the world could see what goes on there, but we're on different systems as far as electronic media and platforms. So people don't get a chance to see each other that much. Um, and I do want to say that I was there consistently until the pandemic hit. And then my life changed, everybody's life changed, and the pandemic hit China twice. It was, and one time in major cities, a lot of the places they were locked in their houses for months, and the government would have people come around and test for COVID and they couldn't leave. And then if they found somebody had COVID, they would take them to a sanitarium. They had to go to the sanitarium. The government would deliver their food, and they didn't choose what food they wanted. They got their food delivered, right? A lot of businesses closed and many, many belly dance studios closed, probably most of them. So that belly dance being a hub for people from all over the world to come and teach, I mean, China being a hub for people from all over to come and teach is that ended with the pandemic. But the talent is still there and probably not as many events or not as much going on, but the talent is there. One of my former students, she has this internet show, and every night she teaches a little class, and people pay like a little bit, but she'll have like, let's say, I don't know how much they're paying, but she'll have like 60,000 people logging in paying. I mean, and that's something when I was in Shenzhen, the group of dancers that I was hanging out with, they were like, one of them, she sings, does singing shows online and gets paid that way. And they're like, why don't you do this? And I'm like, we don't have that many people. Seriously, like it makes a difference when you have a huge population that can just go online and be like, oh yeah, I want to take a class, I'll pay this little amount, but then there's tens of thousands of other people doing the same thing, and you can definitely make a living. Um, things are quite advanced there now. I know I'm going to get a little off topic from dance, but things are so advanced there now. Their way of when they do teach online, it's not like Zoom, not like what I do with my cats running around and my I have my classes are what I'm able to do, but theirs is so sophisticated and they have like I don't know, it's amazing. And then when I was there, like they change constantly. And so when I was in Shenzhen, like it is a huge city. It takes an hour to drive back and forth across Shenzhen. And it's super modern. And like a lot of the hotels in China, they're not expensive, but they're so fancy that they have washers and dryers and dishwashers and kitchens in the hotel room. And then they have robots that come and do all the room service. And you get in the elevator, you have robots. The robots get in the elevator first, and they're in the middle of the elevator, and people have to stand around the edge. And they're so cute too. They're like little square. One time I followed one just to see how it worked, and it just, somehow they buzz the person in the room and they open the door and the robot opens this little thing and there's the room service, the food. And and then electric cars. It's like almost all electric cars. You don't hear the cars coming behind you on the street. And then the sidewalks are super wide and they're full of electric motorcycles and making these deliveries to the robots so the robots can it's it's a different world, I'm telling you. But that was my dream to go to China, and I love China. Yeah, it's really something. It kind of boggles our imagination. Yeah.
And when are you going back?
I'm going back in, well, my next workshop is October 1st in Shanghai.
Is it a whole month also, or?
No, now it's only 3 days. Yeah, and then a few days later, I'll go to Fuzhou for 3 days.
Wow. Now, when you had the whole month, they go how many days a week? Was it?
5 days a week.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, so it was 30 hours of instruction a week.
Mm. And so they were able to do that for a whole month, take like,
They made sacrifices. They'd take time off of work. It correlated with the autumn festival, which is the a holiday season. So that was already a couple weeks. And then they take the extra time. They take their vacation time.
and you would see them. So you did that for 10 years and you would see recurrent students?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people came. Well, the ones that really, the I had a lot that came around 5 years. Yeah. We kind of, me and Estelle would discuss, like when they came for 5 years, something magical would happen. Like one month, a lot of changes would happen. But then after that month, for the rest of the year, they're working on, it sinks in. And then they come the next year and they do that for 5 years. And like, it was amazing. It was like the belly dance university.
Wow. Yeah, I could imagine like a whole month. I've never done a whole month workshop, so it's just like that. Yeah. And then so another question I just wanted. So when they went on stage and perform, most of them they was it a whole hour or two? Like how long was the production on stage?
The production would be about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, there were a lot of solos, but it had to, like, we had to have it so very polished, like the way you enter, the way you exit, not just like, oh, now let's adjust the music and here comes someone else. No, it's like it flows, like there's a way that one enters, one exits at the same time. Um, 1 year I had them exchange flowers as they entered and exit, or something that made it a cohesive show, and that there would be a theme, like I mentioned, a theme running throughout the show. And 1 year it was colors. So the show would, you know, start one color and then it changed into, gradually became other colors through the lights and stuff. But yeah, it was a full-length theater show. And then sometimes we did different things. Like it got really interesting. One time we did it in a Chinese garden, which is so elaborate. The audience was around the edge. We'd be coming in over the bridges and on these platforms and over, exiting on another bridge. And it was really cool to use the space of a Chinese garden. Another time we had one that was on this lake because the theme that year was water. So it was in this, what's it called? I don't know what it's called, but it was like a bridge that goes out to this platform on a lake, and people would come on little boats and watch us. So our audience was seeing us from different sides from boats.
Wow. So did you like before going that you already had kind of a concept and then it built up as you're teaching? Is that how your process
I
was?
had the concept and the music, and then I knew which were going to be the choreographies and that these are the solos I want people to do. And I would have an audition for the solos. It was like an audition, but what I do is there'd be a few days or a few afternoons where I would put on music, let's say songs for the solos. And I'd just say, dance this concept or that concept. And everybody would just, like, they had no idea what I was expecting. They would just dance and I'd see what I'd see in them. I'd be like, okay, there's something about this person that would really benefit from doing this dance, or this person was going to do it really good. But I didn't do anything that would be easy for anybody. Like, if you were, like I mentioned, if you were a beginner, yeah, something that you could do. But if you were advanced and you were doing this song really good, it didn't mean you were going to get to dance that song. You might dance a song that would be more challenging for you.
Mm.
And they love to work hard on these challenges. And yes, so I had basically everything mapped out, but I didn't know who was going to be there. I didn't know what to expect. Then toward the last few years, LED screens were in all the theaters. So they were backdrops, and they were government theaters, and the government really did want us to use the LED screens. So what I would do throughout the year before I'd go to China, I would take different abstract photos. Like one time I went to the Chilhuli blown glass exhibit in Seattle, and I did close-up pictures of blown glass. You couldn't even tell what it was. And that was for the show Colors, I think. Yeah. And so those pictures were in the backdrop. And it was a challenge because, we had theatrical lighting too. I never knew how the pictures were going to mix with the theatrical lighting with the dancers. Because sometimes I think I had a good idea and then it looked like a shadow. The dancer looked like a shadow. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to take the color of this picture, redo it, make it like dull it down or something so it doesn't overshadow the dancer. Um, one time I took pictures of rocks all year, and different rocks can be very interesting as backdrops, but nobody knew they were rocks. You get a close up of a rock and nobody knows what it is. It's very abstract. So basically, most of my pictures for backdrops were abstract. So they didn't draw attention. Like if you had it looking like a palace or something, people are looking at the palace, but if you have some abstract weird shape, you know, they they went with the dances, but these projections, yeah.
And I'm curious to know, like, how was the community? Did they love going to the show? Like, was it sold out? Like, was it a good turnout?
Yeah, we had well, we had the dance community. We would have, let's see, the shows were very inexpensive. Even there were some free shows because it was, the government helped out. But we had the dance community. Sometimes we'd have Middle Eastern business people or diplomatic people, government people. It depended on where we did it. Like, we because there's so much like government community centers and so forth. So sometimes we had the cooperation from those centers to let their people know. And so they're, people that had nothing to do with belly dance, they would come and they liked it because one of my purposes was not to make it exclusionary. I wanted it to be these shows to be something that everyday people could really love. Sometimes we had two different shows. Also, there were a few years where we had two different shows and different concepts. One year my concept was art and entertainment. So we had an entertainment show and an art show. And the entertainment show was based on what I would do when I would do the weddings and the birthdays and different things to keep the general public's attention. So we did that show with like 20 something, like 28 people or however many people that was like in the format of the entertainment shows. We made it like a wedding. And so even chose a couple to be the bride and groom and had the zaffa and it was really fun. And that was actually done at a community center. Most of the people had never seen belly dance and they were delighted. And, mostly belly dance in China was not taught as commercial entertainment, just to go to a birthday party or something. That wasn't what they did. It was more taught as something you go to school for and you put on a stage or do competitions or whatever. When they saw it as entertainment for general public and saw how delighted people were, I was like, even Estelle, she was like, this is amazing. And she loved the reactions of the general public. And so then, she really liked that idea that we can bring this dance to everybody.
That is genius, because you show two different aspects of this dance. That was good. Actually, you're making me think now. So,
Yeah.
yes, thank you. But
Oh, yeah.
now I want to go to China just because I've never been to China, and I just like you make it makes it like so interesting to see how advanced they are. And I've never China was never on my kind of bucket list, but now you're making me want to go and put that
Yeah.
to my bucket list. So yeah, I think I'll maybe do a trip in China. So, well, my gosh, what a great, like, this is such a great story. Thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I mean, that was for like our last, or we'll have something else next week, but this is like the cherry on top. This really, really good story. Like, they're all great. I mean, every week is like, oh my gosh, I love this one. And then this week, oh my gosh, this is as amazing. It's always like better and better. It's like the stories. What a beautiful
Oh,
life.
thanks.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, so for the viewers, enjoy this story as much as that I enjoyed. And thank you for sharing and your insight and bring this the journey of belly dance. And it doesn't have to be just belly dance, but dance in general, and how it could bring people together and in different worlds, in different countries, and so yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, you are welcome. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share.
Oh, hugs and kisses. I'll see you in the next one.
See you next week.